Hey everyone, this is Anirudh. I'm sure you are all doing fine with this pandemic situation and everyone is struggling to work from home. Rather, I think at this time most of us are getting used to this new way of life and the way we are now seeing that how this COVID-19 situation is unraveling and affecting the various aspects of the work which we do in a day-to-day life. At the same time, it is how it is affecting the various aspects of the business which we see, be it any essential service, be it any industry or IP as we say, uh, all are being affected. There, we all are observing changes in it. We are all are observing how industry is unraveling itself. Uh, so today we thought that we would have a very quick chat on how do we expect the industry or at least the patent prosecution will take a turn maybe 2 or 3 months from now, considering this COVID-19 situation is gonna take a toll on the overall economy. So we thought we'll just bring a couple of a couple of bright minds at GreyB. So with me, I have Deepak, who's director at GreyB, and I have some of my team members, Vikash and Sanjeev, who have been very active on the patent prosecution side of the things. So we thought we'll just sit together, we'll chat for some time and see or how do we expect the industry change in due course of time. Maybe one thing which I have seen happening over time is there are a couple of studies, there are a couple of trends which are coming right now where people are filing for extra accelerated examination. I think this is maybe somewhere guided by the fact that there is an uncertainty of what's going to happen next. So maybe people are trying to secure the crucial IP which they wanted to have with them, or it may be just be a simple case that people have too much time at their hand, and by finishing one project after the other they are just trying to keep themselves busy. So by the way, maybe so the next I'll just check with Deepak and the team, so feel free to jump in your comments, team. Is there any trend which you have observed so far? I mean, what do you expect would happen in industry? So open to your thoughts.
I think I was talking to a prosecutor yesterday, and he was saying that most of his clients are like SMEs in US, especially, and they have asked him to stop all the kind of filings or prosecution until unless it's very urgent. And I think people are in wait and watch mode. So, which is, I think, pretty obvious because nobody wants to continue on a direction when they're not sure that direction is going in a way where they would be safe. So because of uncertain times,
Right.
this is coming up. But I've seen that the large companies are still going on with the same plan. When I was in touch with some of the IP council who are managing large corporations, they were completely different. I mean, they said that for us, budget have been assigned. There's no change for such kind of hiccups. We have to continue doing the same stuff that we were planning, maybe that we planned in January. So, which was a very different kind of response than what SMEs are going through. Maybe because, when this uncertain times come up, cash in hand is what
Hmm.
matters the most. And large companies are anyway the winners in such case, especially if they have cash. I mean,
Right.
there are a lot of large companies that also gets bankrupt during this time, but maybe I'm talking about the ones which are cash rich, and they are going to flourish maybe this time.
Maybe. Right. I think uh, I'm getting a similar emotion when I've talked to certain litigators in the past. So uh, very recently when I was talking to the litigators and when this lockdown situation had started all over the world, so I was talking to them and asked like, what do you expect? I mean, how the litigation industry or the IP litigation industry will shape itself considering this situation. And so honestly, I was expecting a little slowdown from the IP litigation side, versus what I hear, and I quote, that was until until and unless we are told otherwise, we are going to, we're gonna pressing forward for all our issues. So I think, Deepak, what you said, I think it's more or less what people are trying to do. They have cash in their hand, and till the time the situation changes, or till the time the dynamics of the global economy changes, they're just going to stick to the plan which they have. But I think this also brings us to a very interesting question. So as of now, uh, we all are speculating that, there might be an economic slowdown. We are speculating a recession. We are speculating this and that. And so far, everybody is sticking to the plan which they have, or they had made in January, or maybe last year, or they had the vision 2020 with themselves. But how do you feel, or what do you think would happen maybe 5 or 6 months down the line, when the global lockdowns are increasing day by day? The similar happened in India here, where we just extended the lockdowns by another 3 weeks. There are chances that it might go further. There are chances it all resolves in early May. So if in case, I mean, Deepak, what do you think it's gonna happen in the next few months? And do you see or foresee some challenges that the IP prosecutors or IP councils might face in the near future?
Um, I think for the next 6 months, we will see a reduction, because I was doing analysis at my end and looking at what happened in 2008, because there at that time also, especially if you talk about US economy, was a bit hard, and a lot of companies were not sure what is going to happen, especially the IT or sector got affected a lot. So I was looking at the trend, and I was like, there was not much. I mean, the pattern was not much impacted. I mean, there was a drop, but there was just a drop of 10%. And over the period of 1 year, and after that 10% drop, it again, I mean, filing got started again. And by the time of 2010 and 2011, it bypassed the highest high, which was there in 2007. So I think that blip came up and stayed for a very short duration of 1 year, and after that, it has not stopped till a long time. So I just feel that it should somehow repeat the same pattern. Again, we would see a drop for the next 1 year, and then again it's going to go up. So the question comes up is that who were the people who continued filing during the 2008 financial crisis, and because of their filing, were they in better position when the market got back, or they suffered? So I think if I go a little bit deeper in that trend and figure this out, it can give a huge leverage to a lot of people who are right now indecisive that what they should do. I think it is a good question to talk about. Maybe we can have one more session where we can do a dissection of that trend around 2008, and figure out what happened at that time.
Yes, yes.
Yes, Deepak. So, Deepak, as you were talking about the what an individual should do at this particular moment of time when there is COVID-19 crisis, and you have some of your applications in the pending mode, and still, how much? I mean, uh, due to the tight hand over the money, tight hand over the liquid funds that you have to spend over the prosecutions. So, I mean, here comes the very decisive factor that should you continue to prosecute your application, or is your application is going in right direction? Um, I mean, Anirudh, I was reading some articles about this, and that how much it would cost for any office action, or the overall prosecution of an application. So I came across an article. So here they have depicted a very clear picture of various domains, that how much generally an attorney cost for the prosecution of the applications. So these figures seems quite very big to me. Uh, so another article where I see that, for single office action, to file, to respond to single office action, you have to spend about 3 to 5K on single office action. So, you know, taking this into account, I was curious that would the major players, major companies be able to, uh, visualize their overall portfolio, that how where their portfolio is heading to. I mean, uh, if you would have clear picture of your overall portfolio, that where my most of the applications are in, getting too much money bled on, or which of the portfolio is on the track, and which might be at risk in this particular time. So, figuring that out, we ran some data stats, and I came across one of the application, from the like Panasonic. So here, if you look at the office sections, so we have got about 9 office sections so far. So 9 office section means if you are spending 3 to 5K per office section, so it is too much money that you are spending on a single application. Now, if you see that the law firm that is handling this particular case is, having about 50% of allowance rate. So, at this point, the main parameter in the prosecution of the application is, art unit, examiner, and law firm. So now art unit and examiner are not in your control. So what you can control is look into the law firm. Now, I have listed down the other law firms which have, acted very much well in this particular art unit. So I mean, if you reach out to these law firm, so here you would have high chance to grant your application. So I mean, any thought on this analysis, Anirudh? What do you think that,
Yeah, I think,
is it useful? Do you think that we can jump into, I mean, other law firms based on these stats?
I think there gonna be a lot of parameters, Sanjeev,
Mm-hmm.
which would which an IP council would consider before switching to law firms. But I think you bring a very interesting point over here because based out of hunch, or like Deepak said, sooner or later IP councils are gonna face a budget cut,
Mm-hmm.
or they would be allocated a fixed budget, and the question at their table would be that should they file more patents, or should they keep on handling the ones which they have. The One thing which I can see is, I'm not sure. So it seems like this assignee is bleeding too much. In terms of engagement with the USPTO. So Sanjeev, do you mind sharing? Is this to whom assignee this application belongs to?
Yes, Deepak, this application belong to Panasonic. So
Okay.
yeah, we saw some trend here that, some of those applications which they got granted,
Hmm.
but they got abandoned due to non-payment of fee. I mean, why is that you are putting so much money in granting the patent, and then after 1 to 2 years, uh, you know you are not being able to pay the maintenance fee to retain that patent. So here is also here comes the big question, that why they are spending this amount of money to grant the application, and later on they are not keeping it, uh, keeping it up, if they either they are not that much interested in that application right now, or what.
Hmm. I think, l- like I said, they might have other motivations behind this, uh, you know, uh, behind making these calls. But if this is something which is happening at scale,
Hmm.
and uh, and if it continues to happen in the future when there are budget cuts, then I think the IP councils might be might be in a bit tricky spot as to how to continue or keep on continuing the prosecution of their portfolio. Uh, but I think that's also a valid point, and if this is happening, then this also makes sense why people are opting for an accelerated examination with this year. Because overall, I mean, with expedited examinations, you'll just simply pay a higher fees to the USPTO. Maybe you'll save a lot on the attorney time. Maybe you save a lot on the to and fro, which
Mhm.
would bring additional fees at your table. So I think sooner or later people would enter into a mode where they want to uh, intelligently or efficiently spend their budget. Personally, I mean, I believe with how economy is gonna shape itself, corporates are gonna request or gonna expect from their resources or from their brilliant minds to to invest more intelligently into various ventures and to get higher value for money. And I mean, the strategy which you are sharing over here, I think it makes sense to me if one law firm is more efficient than the other, and maybe can save like 3 or 5 office actions for you. So overall, I mean, you might end up saving uh, close to like 30 to 40 thousand dollars per filing, which by the article which you have shared seems like a cost of getting another patent.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I mean, it's more like if you think a little or if you depend on the data before you go ahead uh, for a patent filing or rather hiring a law firm or deciding your strategy, you might be able to get more patents in a same amount of money, or maybe you can then diverge your budget to other departments. Because when I have talked to the corporates, what I have seen is they usually have a target, like they have to file like 1,000 patents a year, or the patent developer teams which they have a target of filing 500 patents a year or 1,000 patents a year. So if an IP council is able to do that in half the cost and return the budget back to the organization, or maybe able to divert it at more critical areas, then I think it's gonna be viable. But I mean, let me check with Deepak also. So Deepak, I think you have talked to a lot of IP councils, way more than what I have talked to. Based on your experience, have you also seen something like this, or at least a concern uh, which uh, which we are talking about here right now? Do you also foresee this? I mean, what are your thoughts?
I think these situations happen with a lot of them. Uh, Sometimes, the patent is very important for the company, and then they need a grant irrespective of a higher number of office actions also. So it is, the reason could be different for different people. Sometimes it could be overlooked because there are so many filings that are going on.
Mhm.
But I think at this point of time, the reasons are not important. I think when we look um, at this stage, somehow everyone has to optimize themselves, and so optimization means figuring out a way to get the best return on the investment that is there. So so best return could possibly mean, even if you have spent 6 or 7 or 9 of its action, if that pattern is really relevant, then you should not let it go just because of one or two. Maybe you can discuss and figure out what are the chances of grant, or are we getting the claim so narrow that it is of no use at this point of time. So I think somebody has to spend a week and triage all these applications and what is happening with whom, and divide them into different categories, and figure out what needs to be done. So here, I don't think we can decide or we can guide. I think everyone may have a different route to take. Um, but if they can optimize, I think they should be able to get out. And optimize is more what I feel is like bending themselves to, what they are getting from the management, rather than just cutting them over. And as we were discussing, the other day, that when during the time of crisis or storm, it's not the trees which are the strongest that last. It is the one which can bend for the longest duration of time. So if the councils can bend their strategy for in 1 year or 2 year and do not lose on to the good assets, and if they have to lose, rather than abandoning them, figure out how they can be sold off, or stuff like that, I think they can get a great return out of it. And it is very similar to Anuj. You were saying that just before this discussion, this is a time when people are getting creative. So it's, I think, very similar here.
Mhm. And I think one more factor which people tend to ignore is which might come into play um, is so I'm just talking from this particular perspective is how good the repo or patent prosecutor shares with an examiner or at the respective PTO office. Because when I've talked to the examiners or when I've talked to the prosecutors or some of my other clients, so I've also heard that this is my premium law firm, and this particular attorney, he just takes one round of discussion with the examiner, or at max two when the case is very tough, but he will get me a grant for sure. Versus these are those cases, which this is the one where I give my volume type of a work, and they get me the patents. I just give them the list of the ideas or the information disclosure statements, which would bring, for which I need a patent. So I think we also need to consider this particular parameter, the repo which they share, because ultimately it is also going to affect uh, how much time they take at the PTO, how many office actions they get in return, how well they plan their strategy, which is overall, it's gonna translate into the amount of money which is gonna spent on a per patent basis, which we all think right now is gonna be a tricky situation. I mean, one thing which I also feel is, so the overall I've seen that the in most of the situations the patent department or the IP section gets a budget as a whole. It's the same budget which has to be used, to monetize the asset. The same portion, some portion of the same budget has to be used to maintain the assets, and then finally to build and develop more IP. So if one portion is going to take a substantial amount for whatever be the reason, maybe due to the not having an exact visibility or uh, inability to bend, or maybe they were just not aware that they can bend around the strategy, it's also going to take a toll on the other departments also, whether you might not have money to launch monetization campaigns, or maybe you are not able to maintain all of your patents, which which would ultimately result in all that hassle which you faced in the past. And if you are now not maintaining your asset, it's just like all that money getting wasted, something which is very precious at this point in time.
Yes, Anirudh. Anirudh, coming to this, that this is very crucial for an organization or for a company to, you know, to see that where their overall portfolio, which aspect of the portfolio need attention and which not. We get the same idea, and we quickly prepare an interface for this particular thing. So here,
Hmm.
uh, you know y- I mean, this interface just need your portfolio, and it can clearly visualize that which part of the applications
Hmm.
are in at risk zone, in danger zone, which are going to be in the danger zone, and which are already on track.
Hmm.
So I mean, from this kind of segregation, you can get very clear idea that where you should spend your money, and which are the applications which are causing lot of amount of your money to be spent on.
Hmm.
So I mean, uh, this is the same portfolio which I was talking, the Panasonic one.
Hmm.
So here you can see that every under this section, the uh, you can see the those applications which are already in danger zone.
Hmm.
Okay. So we also provided a possible solution here. What could be the possible solution? So under this particular art unit, what are the other law firms which are very good at that?
Mm-hmm.
So you can see
Uh,
those law firms as well here.
mm-hmm.
Along with the other thing, you can also see the examination patterns, examiner patterns, as well as what could be the
Right.
possible next office action from the USPTO based on the previous trends. So I mean,
Hmm.
all in all, we just try to collate what pointers can be
Mhm.
much more important, uh, in the overall
Right.
perspective.
Right. I think Deepak Sanjeev is just trying to show how he got those law firms.
Yeah.
Right. 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 I think that's a nice way to do it, Sanjeev and Deepak. I think that's what I think it's more or less on the lines of how you were saying that maybe segregating the applications. I think this could be it. Uh,
Hmm.
uh, I'm personally, I would say, I would be more interested. So because I mean, these are those applications which are, which are already lost, so to say. There are already 9 office actions if I see correctly
Mm.
on the screen, and if I'm reading it right. At this time, I think I would be more interested in knowing uh, which are the applications that which might end up like this, or in another way, which might end me bleeding a lot of money. And I
Okay.
think that's what
Yes.
your
Yes,
second
Anirudh.
bracket is.
Yeah, I think this at risk. Uh, I mean, those applications would come under the at risk. Which are on the verge of going to danger zone. So here
Hmm.
you can see the applications which might end up in SOS stage.
Hmm.
You can have clear idea that what should be your next step here.
Right. Right. So Deepak, do you think, you know, you have talked to a lot of attorneys. Uh, so do you think at this time the partners would, instructing their associates to, to spend more time on a prosecution, maybe because it's good for the reputation of the law firm also. At the same time, an IP counsel would want to spend more time uh, just to make sure that the applications which are at the risk or at the verge of facing heat from the USPTO might not end up like there, or or it's just a fancy way of putting things in a putting things together. I mean, what do you think?
Um, I think if I am a law firm, I can't suggest what others should do. If I am a law firm, I think
Hmm?
the only thing that would be there in my mind would be how I can take care of my clients, right? If
Right.
that requires me to uh, tell them to reduce the work, then that is what should be done. If that requires me to spend some extra hours and build such a kind of strategy and give it to them because it will help them,
Hmm.
then I'm not going to wait for them to say yes or pay me.
Hmm.
I would just do it and send it to them.
Hmm.
So I think this is a time to actually help the people who have been working with us for a very long time, and it is less about billable or not billable.
Hmm.
I would ask everybody to, even if it doesn't lead to anything uh, conclusive, sometime brainstorming on such things give you a lot of ideas. Brainstorming with your clients, I mean,
Hmm.
something not, maybe not about your own portfolio, that means your client portfolio. The similar analysis could be done on the competitor's portfolio also. So
Hmm.
more inputs, signals that you have can help you know that it should not be the case that I am asking you to stop. That means stop all my filing, but on the other side, my client, or I mean my competitor, is continuing
Hmm.
with the filing.
Right.
So it's time to actually do the things which we were not doing earlier.
Right. Makes sense. And I just had an idea. So, Sanjeev, if you mind switching back to that article which you were sharing earlier about the cost of filing. Yeah, this particular one. So, Deepak, I think. And I mean, here's another question for you, or maybe based on your experience, if you have seen this or observed this. So, I mean, here's my take. I've seen for different technologies at USPTO, it takes different times to get a patent granted.
Hmm.
Ideally, I mean, USPTO says it should be, the prosecution should be over in 3 years, and after that they start to give term adjustment. But due to one reason or another, it takes usually more than 3 years. For some technologies, it takes up to like 5 years. Also, for some, it takes lesser. A similar variation is expected, in terms of office action which we received, and there are numerous tools, numerous studies have been done to confirm this, and we all agree that patent prosecution is not like something where one size fits everybody. But I mean, do you think at this particular point in time, law firms or IP councils should pull out filing in technologies the where the average number of office actions are higher? Now, every law firm or every IP council might have a different definition of what they consider as higher based on how much money they want to spend. But if I go by a standard rate of like $3,000 to $5,000, maybe I keep a buffer of like just say $10,000, which is like 3 to 4 office sections, which I would pay to once I have filed a patent. So, do you think at this time law firms or IP councils should also be in this mode, pull out from certain areas, focus more in other areas? Do you think this could be a way out? One way to save money at the same time to keep on filing patents. Of course, I mean, once one would also need to understand if those technological areas are in alignment with the business goals of the company. But I mean, just a food for thought.
Um, I think when we talking about patent, there are so many other factors that are associated with it that maybe just number of office action may not be the only reason why someone would decide. But I think that the word that we call as informed decision making. So I think the more signals that you have from all angles can help you decide on it. And this is one signal, may not be the only thing on which you will decide, but definitely the one. So I think the more aware you are, the better prepared you are for the crisis, or in the meetings, when you're taking with the management, you can throw them a lot of things, and not sound unaware or uninformed. So in that sense, I agree that this can be a contributing factor for the company.
Hmm. Yeah, or maybe, I mean, on the other hand, we are also seeing number of abandonments going higher. Uh, while the number of expedited examinations are also increasing, number of abandonments are also going higher. So do you think somewhere companies are, so they have set a upper cap or a threshold of the budget which they want to spend, and maybe it's like, if in this amount of budget, if we get the patent, then it's fine. If it is not, then it's a lot lost cause. We're not gonna chase after it until and unless it is very crucial to what they're planning to do.
Yeah, I mean, the stats can tell us a lot, I think so. If you guys have any.
Hmm. I mean, I just have a couple of reads from certain articles, and I think I'm just trying to make sense of what Sanjeev showed us, what's on this screen, and what I read a couple of weeks back. But yeah, so far so good. I think this is nice. But by the way, coming back to what Sanjeev was showing, I think it's not more about the interface, or I mean, what has been built is more or less the point is to, at this time, we need to think before we act. We just cannot go in an autopilot mode where if an inventor is submitting an idea and we think it's good, we just simply cannot send it to law firm. I think that's the message which we are trying to bring home, or that's what we are maybe subconsciously heading towards.
Yeah, I agree on that part. Yeah.
Understood. Understood. And so I'll just I also want to check with Sanjeev. So Sanjeev, I think this is something which you did on the Panasonic portfolio,
Yes,
and
Anirudh.
then the patents are available very easily on a public side of things. But what if you know an IP councils, because they already have, I mean they have tens of tools, man. They have a lot of interfaces already. Uh,
Okay,
is
okay.
there a way, they can also visualize in a similar way like you have done, or
Yes, Anirudh. I mean, few of our client use internal docketing system, so it is not always that they are always coming to this interface specifically to check the whole
Mhm.
portfolio. So we think in that direction, and we tweaked this whole algorithm in the way that uh, it can it can be quickly integrated with their internal docketing system. So for example, we have such example here, the Salesforce, with the Salesforce.
Mhm.
So in Salesforce, you can get the whole picture of your portfolio in your internal docketing system in itself. So if you are going to check on patent basis, so I mean, when you click on your patent, you can get the main factors which are affecting on the side. Which are contributing to for your decision whether you should continue or not. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
I think
yeah, this system can be easily plugged into any internal docketing system.
yeah, I think that's more than a system. I think it's more about the information which is right there on my screen.
Hmm.
Uh, and yeah, I think for this particular case, there have been like 10 office actions. There have been 3 RCEs. Already we have spent a lot of money. So yeah, I think these type of discussions would also come in handy for an IP council, where uh, they would also need to decide if they, with the limited monetary resources they have, should they pursue in this particular direction, or should they move out and see some or file some other IP, or maybe reroute this money towards the pruning side or the maintenance decisions, or into some other activities. Hmm.
So just to confirm here, when we're talking about Salesforce, basically we are assuming that an internal system that the company is using to track everything is like Salesforce, right?
Yes.
And we mean that whatever we are talking about can be integrated into their existing system. So there's no new system that needs to be looked at.
Yes, Deepak. Yes, Deepak. Why not? If you are reading some, let us say if you are reading an article on a website, and you saw something very related to, it's something very related to that particular article. That what are other facts or other resource material, like in Wikipedia, where you get the information, but at the end you see the references, you see the resources where that information has been gathered. So it's much of like the embedded system where you can along with the patent you can see all the crucial factors which play very crucial play in the decisive factor of your application.
Yeah, I think this is much better than you, because there are so many new systems that are coming up that, no, at this point of time, nobody needs a one more thing to look at and check. So, and I think this is very similar to what I had in mind when we were talking about, if you can get multiple different signals at one place, it can increase your power of making an informed decision making. So this is much better that if they have, they are anyway looking at their applications in their internal system, so they get one more thing at the same place. And I don't know what else could be there, but apart from this, if there could be more such things that can be integrated, maybe they don't need to go to a separate docketing system. They can have everything here itself. So I think that is much better idea at this point of time.
Totally agreed. I mean, on complete same page here. Right. I mean, so far, I think what I have understood from this discussion is soon there are gonna be some changes into the filing strategy, and maybe, I mean, and that's a big maybe, that the IP councils or the law firms need to bend a little about the decisions they might require to make. It's very likely they might not be, because like Deepak said in the very beginning, uh, has been talking to the people who have very huge monetary resource or cash reserves with them, so they might need not to be worried about this much, or how carefully they need to spend their budget. But at the same time, there can be people, and uh, personally, I mean, I believe that if we can save some money, we should definitely. But yeah, I think opinions can vary.
Yeah, I agree. I remember one of the companies that we used to work with, I think they used to classify each patent into 3 different categories, irrespective of, this time or that time. I mean, that was a very good strategy internally, so that, at any point of time, if they were asked that they are closing down one product or they are closing down one team, or they want to double down on something, for them it was very easy to figure out, from looking at the patents as high, medium, and low. They know which have what potential, and which can be abandoned or which can be doubled down with respect to the office action also. So I think there are few things that if everybody can integrate at one place, I mean, the more information we are going to give to this system that we are looking at right now, which could be Salesforce or any other thing that company has internally, it can be an amazing powerhouse for the IP department, I believe.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's perfectly fine. The more data we have at a decision making table, the more visibility we have, the better strategies we can make. So on same page.
Yeah.
Great then. Then I think it's already been an hour, and I'm just keeping a tab of the clock also. This has been productive, so I'll not take much of your time, I think. And with so with this, I think we can conclude for today. But any concluding comments from Deepak Sanjeev you want to make, or if you just want to make a Dalgona coffee, that's also fine.
I think if the more people, I mean, there would be a lot of people who generally hear such discussion, and if everyone has collectively all what others are using to keep track of their portfolio, and if you bring everything at one place, it would be an amazing stuff, I would say, for people. So um, if anyone would has an interest in knowing what are the other signals that can be added to their tracking system, I think I would be very happy to share that um, with people. So I think we can invite emails or questions that people can send over to us, and we can share what we have seen everyone using. So that's what I would say, that after hearing this particular discussion, if someone feels how this system can be enhanced, then I think we can share some ideas.
Sure, sure. Great then, great then. Then yeah, then all right then. Okay, folks. Then I think we'll answer your queries or your questions over an email. Feel free to send them to us, and we'll see if there is any way we can, if there are any ways which we can enhance the system, or the ideas. Most welcome. I think more or less what we're trying to convey, or what we're trying to figure out is there a new way we need to look at the things, given the everything around us has changed so suddenly, and again seems like There might be, there might not be. It all depends on how time unfolds. But it's better to be prepared. It's better to be informed, so that you know, gut-based decisioning can always be tricky. You cannot be lucky on each and every day. So the more data which we bring at the table while making an call, the more better it will be, given these uncertain times. So with that thought, I think we'll conclude. It's been a fun. It's been always a fun talking to Deepak and Sanjeev and the team over here. And once again, thanks for joining, folks. Have a good one. Bye bye.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Bye bye.
Bye bye, guys.